Hello, everyone. Welcome to the hands-on portion of the class. This is going to be the first exercise that we're going to get through. Now, the hands-on exercises are not going to be something that are going to be overwhelming. They're going to be some basic um, security type hands-on activities that are, we're just going to look at those, look at kind of what the vulnerability is, what the resolution is, and what the risk is to your environment. So we're just going to kind of go through these, step by step, and we're going to kind of go through the setup here just briefly. Now, again, most of you should already know how to set up a virtual machine. If you do not, I'm sure by this point, hopefully, somebody has helped you to do so. So let's go ahead and jump in as far as the setup is concerned. Now, most of you are probably using a Windows machine, and the links that I sent were for the VM player. If you are using a Macintosh, VM Fusion is the typical tool when it regards to the VMware. Now you can download VMware Fusion from the DreamSpark account that UNCC has. If you have an account or if you haven't set that up, especially as a grad student, this is something that's very advantageous. I highly recommend that you reach out to Sandy Kraus and see if you can get that DreamSpark account set up. But we're going to kind of go through this whole quick setup just to kind of show you how this functions and how this works. And again, there's going to be some deviation just depending on the operating system that you're currently using, as well as if you choose to use um, VirtualBox instead of VMware. All right. So basically, the way this is going to work is I'm going to have a additional virtual machine that's going to be uploaded to Canvas, which is going to be Metasploitable 2. I'll also provide some links for Metasploitable 2 if you're unable to get that. But the basic setup is going to be pretty much the same. So let's go ahead and look at this just briefly. Again, I've already set Metasploitable up here for you to go ahead and see. And then in addition, I also have just a basic Kali Linux version, just like I asked you to download here. So as you can see, I've got these set up, but just kind of give you a quick run through. If you're having difficulty with trying to set these up, you can just kind of see what I'm doing, and we'll take it from there. So whether it's VM Player for the Windows or for Mac, you're going to have a basic virtual machine library screen just like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to look for to add a new virtual machine here, and again, there's going to be some differences more or less, but what you're going to do, I think for Windows, you're going to have actually create. Here you're going to start with the new. You're actually going to create a custom virtual machine. It's going to give you that option. So we'll go ahead and do that. Hit continue. The Metasploitable is going to also be an Ubuntu box, so we'll just go ahead and hit Linux, Ubuntu 64. We're going to continue. But whereas the Windows will allow you to go ahead and pick from the particular folder that wherever you downloaded Metasploitable or Kali Linux, you're going to use an existing virtual disk. You're going to go to that, and again, you can see here the VMDK is what you're looking for. This is Metasploitable 2. You would click on that, hit choose, and then that's going to start the process for you to bring that up. Now, since I've already done that, I'm not going to go through that process, but after you have that going, then what you're going to end up doing is you're going to go to, again, some differences in between Windows and Mac. You're going to right click on that particular box. You're going to go to settings. For VM Player, you're going to look for the network adapters, much like what you're going to be looking for here. All right, so in VM Player, I think it's going to be setting in the VM Player for the Windows. It's going to be private network with my host, which is I think is like VMnet. It'll say host only. It'll have a little drop down, and you'll look at it, and it'll say host only. It'll be it's like VMnet 1 or something like that. For this one, you're going to do private to my Mac. Select that, and in addition, you're also going to go to memory. To be perfectly honest, you can see here that I have this set up with 2 gig of memory. For the Metasploitable, that should be more than sufficient. And to be perfectly honest, so if Kali should be the same. Now this box, please keep in mind, has 16 gigabytes of RAM. So I have plenty of RAM here. If you're limited in RAM, these virtual machines should work fine with only 1 gigabyte of RAM. So again, just for our purposes, we're not going to be doing a whole lot of crazy stuff here. So just try to keep that in mind when you're setting these up. All right, so after you get these going, you'll go ahead and play them with the same kind of network settings. And what you should have is when you go and you pull up the ifconfig, and again, for those of you who don't know, the command to pull up the IP address is ifconfig, just as I've done here for the Metasploitable, and you can see the address is 192.168.110.128. That's going to be something very similar to what you're going to be seeing. So just keep that in mind as you're going through here. Excuse me. So as I'm going through, what we're going to be doing next, again, this is just going to be a basic setup of everything that we're going to be, some very light things this first walkthrough, just to make sure that everybody understands. If you haven't got a chance to kind of play with Kali Linux and kind of work through, this is the all the different applications on it. You can pull things up from the command line, or you can just kind of hit these little dots here that's going to pull everything up. But basically what you're looking for, you're going to be looking for Wireshark. This is what we're going to be using for this first hands-on activity. But your best friend here, in regards to learning the command line, if you have no experience with Linux, is going to be the terminal. So let's go ahead and look at that right now. So if you pull up the terminal, and with unlike other versions of Linux, you are always going to be running as root. So if any of you don't know, most of the time you're going to have to put become sudo or something like that in order to escalate your privileges to root in order to run certain types of things. So, but for this purpose, you're always running as root, so we don't have to do sudo. So let's go ahead and pull up Wireshark. We'll give that a moment. Okay, now that Wireshark is up, so let's just talk about just briefly what Wireshark is. Wireshark, even much like there's plenty of tools out there that you can use in order to do what's called packet sniffing. So what packet sniffing is it can be used to capture and scan traffic moving across the network. There's a lot of different ones. TCP dump is another really good one. It's command line based instead of this nice graphical user interface that you have here with Wireshark. So it doesn't really matter what you use. It's really up to you. The reason I like Wireshark is just because it puts everything in a nice little format for you, and you can set the filters fairly easily without having to doing a lot of command line kung fu, but it works well. So what we're going to be doing here is, we had talked about cryptography. We talked about encryption and protocols and stuff like that we see within our network. And we're going to talk about this is going to be a basic. If we work for a company, or we're trying to secure our company, what are clear text protocols and why are they a problem? Why are having things like FTP on port 21, which is a file transfer protocol, or Telnet, which is a management protocol for firewalls or switches or servers, or even HTTP, which most of us use when we're browsing the internet, which is over port 80. When we're browsing, why is that a danger if we try to log into that FTP server or that Telnet device, or we try to log into some website over HTTP instead of HTTPS? So we've kind of talked about several different things up to this point, and I want to just kind of go over why this is a problem, why this can give us such a headache. So this is what we're going to kind of be identifying. Now, again, this is going to be just in between my Kali box here and this Metasploitable device here, which, oh, by the way, just quick caveat, this Metasploitable should not in any way be used, in some sort of production environment. Do not hook this in, to something. Don't let this connect to the internet, because this is highly vulnerable and has tons of different exploits on it. So we're just going to keep this on your host only, with the settings that I gave you a few moments ago. So do not put this on your environment in any way, shape, or form. So just make sure I cover myself on that particular instance. So let's go ahead and get this set up so we can start looking at some traffic here. So we do have an IP address here, and let's go ahead and look at it again. So 192.168.110.128, and you need to make sure that you're on the same network. So just so we know that we're on the same network. All right, so we're going to have 192.168.110.131. All right, so we have those addresses there. We know we're on the same network. So here we are looking at Wireshark. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to look at our network interface. Now, for this particular instance, ETH0, which is going to be a virtual network card here on this particular device, that's what you're going to select, and we're going to go ahead and select what type of traffic we want to look at. So we're going to say we want to see host 192.168.110.128, and we want to look at some specific traffic. So first of all, before we start looking too deep into this, we need to see what kind of protocols, if there's anything that's dangerous on this particular website. So I tell you what, before we do that, let's do what's called an Nmap scan. All right, so again, we just briefly talked about this. So knowing about your environment is so important. So when you're looking at what's open to the internet, this is a great tool called Nmap, which is usually part of an ethical hacker's way of doing an audit. They're looking for specific ports and services that are open on their customers. So, but you can also do this to your own environment. To say, hey, look, I need to know what's out there so I can get better control of it. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to start an Nmap scan here. We're going to use the option of V, which is going to be verbose, which is going to basically, the more verbose, you can actually put more V's on here and it'll actually even look more verbose, which basically there's just more output to the screen. But we're just going to use one for right now. All right, so we're going to look at 192.168.110.128. Okay, so we're going to look at this particular device, and what we're going to do is Nmap is a great little tool, because in addition to sending out different scans and stuff to be able to see what's open out there, it can also has a whole listing of scripts in addition, so it can pull additional features. So what I'm going to do is use TAC-A, and what TAC-A is going to do is it's going to run all the available scripts that it can on that particular device to kind of find out what the operating system is and any additional information that it can grab. In addition, I'm going to say not to ping, so that's what that TAC-P means. There's several different other options. You can run what's called a send scan, if any of you are familiar with, as we were talking in earlier lectures about the three-way handshake when it comes to TCP/IP. What you can actually do is different syntax, like run a TAC lowercase s, uppercase s. This is what's called a send scan. So what this will do is this will begin the three-way handshake without actually completing it. This can be advantageous sometimes if particular devices out there are told not to respond to certain types of scans. This will make it look like it's beginning a TCP handshake without actually completing it. But for all intents and purposes for this particular moment, we're just going to run a basic Nmap scan just to kind of look at this device, Metasploitable 2, right here, and see what's open on it. So this is going to take a couple of minutes, so what we're going to do is I'll pause this and then I will come back after the scan is completed. Alright everyone, looks like we've got some output here from our Nmap scan. Again, this took about 2 minutes, maybe not even that. So let's kind of look through and see what kind of information. There's tons of different information, different scripts that we ran, and it all came back with the different ports that are open. So let's kind of look at some of these ports. As a ethical hacker if you're auditing a customer, or you are actually just looking at your own environment. You need to know these types of things that are open. So again, these are the results for the Metasploitable 2, which is, like, again, I say highly vulnerable. So you can see here, well, first off, it has FTP open. You can see it has Telnet open. Again, here's SMTP. This is also a clear text protocol. You have SSH that's open. Let's see what else we got here. You have port 80 open, port 53 open. Okay, so you've got lots of different protocols to look up. So there's lots of good information here. So let's start looking at some of this stuff a little bit deeper. Since we know we have FTP, Telnet, SMTP, HTTP, these clear text protocols, we're going to take advantage of those as if we were a auditor just kind of looking at this information, or as this is our environment and we're trying to figure out why this stuff is open and what the risk is to our environment. So let's look at what exactly the problem is. So we know, first of all, that port 21 is open. So let's go ahead and call that out. So at this point, we're going to be looking at, on this interface, ETH0, the host is going to be this IP address, and the port is going to be 21, which is for FTP. So what we're going to be doing is monitoring that particular traffic. Now, so we're going to hit enter here. So any traffic that's going to be sent to this particular server over FTP is going to show up here. Now let's talk about what we're going to see here in this output. If any of you remember the original movie Jaws, Hooper and Brody, they kind of cut the shark open in the middle of the movie, and Hooper starts pulling out stuff out of the stomach. I mean, it was really gross, but so you're asking yourself, well, what does that got to do with sniffer output? Well, the concept is very similar. When packets are captured, each one has a slew of innards that you're going to dissect one piece at a time. So just like Hooper digs into the open-bellied shark, you can kind of dig through the packet innards to find those specific little morsels that would tell you that you need to know. So the point here isn't that the movie, it's not some sort of movie trivia. I mean, I do love shark films, but the point you should take away from this is that each packet captured really does have an immense amount of data that you can use for reconnaissance or setting up future attacks, or even just to kind of see what you have for your environment. And again, this is, I'm speaking from the point of a certified ethical hacker or an auditor. So this is what we're looking at. So as we are, we're going to go ahead and see if I can minimize this here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my handy dandy little terminal. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try to set, we're going to FTP to this device as if we were connecting as a legitimate user. Okay. All right. So, we got a little dot there. My fault. This helps. Aha, there we go. All right, so as soon as we connected, you can kind of see in the background what's happening with Wireshark. It sees that connection. It's already pulling that information up. So let's go ahead and log in. So we're going to say UNC Charlotte is our username. All right, and we're going to say UNC Charlotte is our password. Okay, now obviously these aren't real credentials for this particular, for the Metasploit, but I'm just trying to show you proof of concept here. So as you can see, whether we were able to log in or not, it doesn't matter. This is the output. So let's go ahead and look at this information that we got from our Wireshark. We're going to go ahead and stop the capture. All right, and so you can see here my address is 131, so that's where here it's coming up the source and the destination IP. It's coming up with a protocol, and again, we know that we're using FTP on this particular box trying to connect, so you can already see it. Now, before we even have dug into a lot of the little pieces here, you can already see the risk of what's going on with this particular protocol and why this is such a problem. So look right here where it asks for the user, it's already telling us. But let's kind of look at this a little bit better. So go ahead and right click on that particular packet, and you're going to follow the TCP string. Okay, so what do we see here? user, UNC Charlotte, password, UNC Charlotte. This is all in clear text. So what's the problem here? What's the risk? Why are we doing this hands-on activity? So is to think of it like this. If you have an environment where you have FTP, Telnet, HTTP open to the internet, the risk here is that they're going to transmit their credentials in the same way. These are clear text protocols. So if you have them open to the internet, and again, I'm going to use my coffee shop analogy, and you are connected to a network where there's lots of different people, like a wireless network, where everybody's on the same network, such as an airport or coffee shop or something, and you start logging into devices that have FTP, Telnet, HTTP over, and someone is sniffing traffic, watching traffic that's going across the network, they're going to be able to capture these credentials in clear text. Even if this is something that is within your environment and you're using FTP and Telnet, which you should not be, or even HTTP, these credentials are also transmitted in clear text on the internal network. And again, you would think, well, that's an acceptable risk because these are all people I work with. Well, you don't know. You don't know what type of people you work with and what types of ulterior motives. So it's always the suggestion when it comes to this particular risk and vulnerability is to use something that's encrypted, such as SSH. SSH will work with Telnet. It'll work with FTP. Always, as we talked about in cryptography several weeks ago, you want to use HTTPS instead of HTTP, and this is the reason why these credentials are transmitted in clear text. So again, this is something that, this is a small hands-on activity. Again, we're going to start growing with these hands-on activities. But the main point of this week was to, number one, get your setup, get your 2 boxes, because we're going to be using this same Metasploitable box and the same Kali box for every single hands-on activity. And you can kind of see, just play around with Wireshark a little bit. It's a great little tool. Again, if you have something that you prefer, like TCP, dump, which is always a good one. Go for it. I won't object. It doesn't really matter as long as you're getting the same results. It doesn't really matter at this point. But continue to look at some of these, play around with them. Try TCP dump, if you'd like. But this is a great little tool to kind of monitor and watch that traffic to see what's actually traversing your network. So until next time, I'll talk to you soon.